In the heart of our modern world, a profound tragedy has unfolded, casting a harsh light on the systems we were told to trust. The crisis in Gaza, which has continued its brutal march into this day of August 4, 2025, has become more than just a regional conflict. It is a mirror reflecting the deep moral and systemic failures of the Western-led global order. For years, we witnessed the slow, agonizing destruction of a people and their homeland. We have seen homes, hospitals and schools turned to dust, and the very fabric of life systematically dismantled. The world watched, armed with high-definition cameras and instant news alerts, yet the international institutions designed to prevent such horrors proved powerless, or worse, unwilling to act decisively and justly. This was not a failure of information, but a failure of conscience. The scale of the devastation is difficult to comprehend, a testament to a world that has lost its moral compass. Since the conflict escalated in late 2023, the numbers have told a horrifying story. Over 59,000 precious lives lost, with more than 143,000 injured. Among the dead are thousands upon thousands of children, their futures stolen in the most violent way imaginable. Let us pause and think about that. Over 13,300 children were killed by the end of last year alone. These were not just statistics, they were sons and daughters, students and dreamers. The infrastructure of life itself was targeted, with over 90% of homes damaged or destroyed, leaving a population of nearly 2 million people displaced and facing the constant threat of famine and disease. This catastrophe did not happen in a vacuum. It happened under the watchful eyes of Western democracies that have long preached to the world about human rights and international law. Yet when faced with a clear case of injustice, documented meticulously by organizations like Amnesty International and the International Rescue Committee, their actions spoke louder than their words. While Palestinian children were literally dying from starvation, and while international courts like the ICC issued arrest warrants for war crimes, these powerful nations continued to supply the very weapons enabling the destruction. This hypocrisy has laid bare the selective nature of their commitment to justice, revealing a system that protects the powerful rather than the oppressed. The crisis in Gaza, therefore, has served as a global awakening. It has forced millions around the world to confront an uncomfortable truth. The international system, as it currently exists, is fundamentally broken. It is a system that speaks of peace while facilitating war, that champions human rights while enabling atrocities, and that promises order while perpetuating chaos. The immense suffering of the Palestinian people has become a stark symbol of this profound betrayal. It has unmasked the pretense of a just world order and revealed the moral bankruptcy at its core, forcing us all to question the foundations upon which our modern world is built and to seek a more righteous and compassionate alternative. For generations, the world was told to look to the West as the standard bearer of progress and enlightenment. The ideals of democracy, freedom, and the rule of law were presented as universal values, a promise of justice for all who would embrace them. These concepts were exported globally, often with immense pressure, as the only legitimate path to a stable and prosperous future. The people of the Muslim world, including the Palestinians, were encouraged to place their faith in these institutions, in the United Nations, in international law, and in the moral leadership of Western nations. They were told that through these channels, their grievances would be heard and their rights would eventually be secured. The crisis in Gaza has shattered this illusion into a million pieces. The betrayal felt by Muslims worldwide is deep and painful. They have witnessed a grotesque double standard where the principles of human rights are applied selectively depending on the identity of the victim and the perpetrator. The passionate calls for intervention and sanctions in other conflicts stood in stark contrast to the muted responses and active obstructions seen in the case of Palestine. This hypocrisy was not subtle, it was broadcast for all to see. The very nations that lecture others on democratic values have actively shielded a state accused of committing genocide from any meaningful accountability. This has led to a profound and irreversible loss of faith, a realization that these celebrated ideals are not universal truths, but tools of power, wielded to serve geopolitical interests. As a result, a seismic shift in consciousness is occurring across the global Muslim community, or Ummah. The long-held hope that Western systems would deliver justice has evaporated, replaced by a stark and sobering clarity. Muslims are waking up to the reality that these man-made systems are inherently flawed, incapable of delivering the true justice and mercy that humanity craves. The slogans of freedom and democracy now ring hollow, tainted by the blood of innocent men, women, and children in Gaza. The trust that was once tentatively given has been broken, perhaps forever. This disillusionment is not born of cynicism, but of lived experience, the painful experience of seeing promises broken and justice denied time and time again. This collapse of trust is not merely a political sentiment, it is a spiritual turning point. It is a collective realization that seeking solutions from systems that have proven themselves to be morally bankrupt is a futile endeavor. The failure to protect the people of Gaza has become the ultimate evidence that humanity cannot rely on flawed, secular ideologies to build a just world. This great betrayal has pushed Muslims to look inward, to their own heritage, their own faith, and their own divinely inspired worldview for the answers. It has ignited a search for an alternative path, one that is not built on shifting political interests, but on the unchanging principles of divine guidance, mercy, and absolute justice for all of creation. Out of the ashes of disillusionment, a powerful conviction is rising. Across the Muslim world, from the east to the west, a new consensus is forming. If man-made systems have failed so catastrophically, then the only true solution must lie in a system given to us by the Creator. Muslims are turning back to Islam not just as a private faith, but as a comprehensive blueprint for a just and compassionate society, an Islamic civilization. This is not a retreat into the past, but a confident stride toward a future where governance is rooted in divine principles of justice, mercy, and dignity for every human being, regardless of their faith or background. This is the solution that offers hope where secularism has delivered despair. This turn towards an Islamic framework is a direct response to the moral vacuum exposed by the Gaza crisis. The world has seen what happens when power is divorced from morality and when law is untethered from divine accountability. The Islamic tradition, in stark contrast, offers a holistic system where the ruler is accountable not only to the people but, most importantly, to God. Faith, life itself, intellect, lineage, and property. The horrors inflicted upon Gaza represent a violation of every single one of these principles, reinforcing the belief that only a civilization built on divine revelation can truly safeguard humanity from its own worst impulses and establish genuine peace and security. This conviction is deeply rooted in the primary sources of Islam, the Quran, and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It is he who has sent his messenger with guidance and the religion of truth to make it prevail over all religion, even though the polytheists dislike it. This verse is not merely a historical statement, it is a divine promise of the ultimate triumph of God's truth and justice on earth. It assures the believers that no matter how dark the present moment seems, the light of divine guidance is destined to prevail. This promise serves as a powerful source of resilience and hope, inspiring Muslims to work towards the re-establishment of a just order. Furthermore, the Quran speaks directly to the promise of leadership for the righteous. Allah has promised those among you who believe and do righteous deeds that He will surely grant them succession to authority upon the earth, just as He granted it to those before them. This verse, known as the Ayat al-Istiklaf, or the verse of succession, is a clear covenant from God. It links faith and righteous actions directly to the granting of authority and security on earth. For countless Muslims watching the events in Gaza, this verse is a call to action, a reminder that the path to restoring dignity and justice for the Ummah lies in a collective return to sincere faith and righteous deeds, which will unlock the divine promise of succession. The belief in the return of a just Islamic order is not wishful thinking. It is a core tenet of our faith, foretold by the one who does not speak from desire, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He outlined the future of his Ummah with remarkable clarity, describing the different phases of governance it would experience. In a famous and authenticated hadith, he prophesied a cycle that begins with prophethood, followed by a rightly guided caliphate, then a hereditary kingship, and then a period of oppressive, tyrannical rule. For many, the current state of the world, marked by injustice and the suffering of Muslims, perfectly fits the description of this tyrannical phase. But the prophecy does not end there. It concludes with a message of ultimate hope. The Prophet, peace be upon him, promised that after the period of oppressive rule, there would be a glorious return to the original model. He said, "Then there will be a khilafah on the prophetic methodology." This is the promise that animates the hearts of believers today. The return of the caliphate, a just global leadership guided by the principles of the Quran and the example of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is not a question of if, but when. Respected Sunni scholars throughout history, from the classical giants like Ibn Kathir to contemporary voices, have affirmed this interpretation. They see the current global turmoil not as a sign of Islam's weakness, but as the necessary darkness that precedes a prophesied dawn. The signs of this impending change are all around us. The manifest failure of secular ideologies to solve humanity's most pressing problems, the exposure of global hypocrisy, and the spiritual reawakening happening within the Muslim Ummah are all catalysts for this transformation. The crisis in Gaza, in all its tragedy, has accelerated this process faster than anyone could have anticipated. It has united the hearts of Muslims globally and clarified their vision. They see with certainty that the only path forward is the one ordained by their Creator. This global shift is not a threat to the world, but a promise of mercy, a promise to restore balance and justice for all of humanity. Therefore, let this be a message of unwavering hope and faith. Do not despair at the images of destruction, for within this trial is a divine plan unfolding. The world is being prepared for a paradigm shift. The rise of a just Islamic civilization, led by a caliphate on the prophetic methodology, is inevitable because it is a promise from Allah and His Messenger, peace be upon him. This dawn is approaching sooner than many expect. It is our duty to have faith, to remain steadfast, and to be among those who work to welcome this new era of justice, compassion, and true peace for the entire world.